Picks in the Z Sports Lounge. We're going to head out and get a chance to talk to Baseball Digest main guy, Jerry Milani. How you doing, sir?
Doing great today. How are you?
We're doing very good, very, very good. I want to say thank you for taking the time. You've got a very wide background, and now I find out Baseball Digest and international connection points to everything baseball. Okay, if you're like every other person I know in baseball, you're like a walking anthology of the sport.
Well, I just love the sport. I've loved it since I was probably 7 years old, and my dad took me to my first game or bought me my first pack of baseball cards, kind of like a lot of kids. And now, fortunately, I've grown up working in the sports industry, and now I have an opportunity to kind of work a little bit in a sport that I really love.
And baseball is one of those sports that was the first one to break the bridge of bringing in anybody but American into the sport. Every single lineup is a snapshot of the entire world population of baseball. It is really a bringing of cultures together. It's very it blew us away 20 years ago when it became huge.
Yeah, there's been slowly. It took time, but once the gates opened up, first in the Latin American countries, and then in Asia, and now we're finding players all over the world who are knocking on the door. Once that happened, it opened up the sport to the whole world, and we saw not just a difference in the styles of play that spiced up the game and made it better, but just the quality of play overall is better because you're pulling from a wider array of talent from all over the world.
Now, everybody wants to get the nuts and bolts. What is the next big thing right now on the international realm for baseball?
There's a couple things. The first thing right now that the Baseball Federation and all the federations across the world actually are working on is reinstatement of baseball back into the Olympics. Folks may not know that baseball has been eliminated from the Olympics for 2012. And the goal now is to get it reinstated, and baseball is on the short list of sports that are being considered for 2016. It's very important, not just for baseball in the USA, which the Olympics is an important part of, but all across the world. There's a lot of countries that if baseball is not in the Olympics, those countries aren't necessarily going to continue funding the sport in their home countries, and that would be a shame because we're just starting to touch the surface of countries. There's two players from India who just signed and actually just made their debuts in the Gulf Coast League the other day. There's players from all these countries that, what we've seen at Taiwan and China and Japan, that there's a really good brand of baseball being played there, and those countries are now just opening up to having great players who are going to come over here, and some of them are already here in the minor leagues.
Now, in Baseball Digest, how is it set up and broken down? Because we're going to make sure the links are on the site for them to go see this and check this out. But how did you bring this all together?
Well, Baseball Digest, is an iconic brand. The magazine itself is the longest-running baseball magazine, just baseball-dedicated magazine in the country, in the world. So recently, Baseball Digest had never really had a web presence. It's kind of been, because it's such a traditional magazine, it's kind of been stuck in the print mode, and it's still doing very well on the print side. It was the first baseball magazine that I ever subscribed to, back when I was in my teens or even before that. And now they've extended the brand to the website, and the web, it's interesting. It's a compilation of all different kinds of stories. There's an international section. There's a history section where people just write about history. But then there's day-to-day following of many of the teams. And it's people who follow the teams. Some are professional writers who are actually with the teams. And some are commentators who watch the teams every day, but also, like me, have other jobs or other lives that this is kind of a passion of theirs, so they bring that passion to all the articles that are in there. There's stuff for fantasy fans, there's stuff just covering the minors, just covering independent ball, and my section is the international section. I edit the international section as part of my work with the International Baseball Federation, and it's something that I really enjoy.
Baseball, for me, is one of those sports that when I watch it on TV, I just can't enjoy it as much as being in, I guess, sitting in those seats and looking at that beautiful grass field, because it's one of those leisure sports. It's not like football. It's not like basketball. It's not even like hockey. It's one of those leisure sports that my biggest thrill is just sit there, have a nice hot dog, have a nice, adult beverage, sit with my kids, joke around, take pictures. It is one of the best leisure sports to be at as an event. It's an awesome, even if it's, the Durham Bulls, who, by the way, are awesome. It is just a wonderful watch. I mean, how many games do you get to go see?
Well, my friends and I, yeah, a few of my friends and I share a season ticket package, and we have for about 10 or 12 years. So we split the games up, and so I probably go to maybe 15 or 20 major league games, Yankee games. I'll try to go one road trip somewhere, either to Baltimore or Washington or someplace where I can see a game. And I try to see some minor league games as well, and college games in the area. We have a lot of college teams in New York, so I might see upwards of 40, 45 games where I'm in person. But as a big Yankee fan, I probably see 120 or so of their games. But I'm following the sport from watching the games and also from just gathering information and learning about what's happening internationally. So it's kind of a double side where I get to see a little bit of it and I also get to read, a lot. There's so much out there to read about baseball that you kind of pick and find the best things and go with those.
Yeah, in baseball, there's no shortage of information. It is the most stat-driven sport on the planet. Every time I turn around, someone's coming up with a brand new stat that they're trying to follow.
It's interesting. There's two kind of theories on it. One is that it started with Moneyball a few years ago, the book written about the Oakland Athletics and their methodology in trying to find ways to improve their team and exploit things that were missing in baseball. And there's a reliance on the statistics in a lot of cases that some people think is maybe too extreme. Others think we should look at them at all. I think a lot of people now are starting to realize that there are tools, and some of those stats that you talked about have some value. They're trying every day to find new defensive statistics and things that can kind of measure things that we haven't measured. One of the issues with some of these stats is it's hard to measure every at bat as being the same. An at bat in August for a player on a team out of the pennant race with a man on second and 2 outs is different than Yankees Red Sox game 6 of a playoff series, or even a regular season game, Yankees Red Sox, or any rivalry game, or any game involving teams that are in a pennant race with a man on second and 2 outs in the 6th inning. So it's hard to say, okay, every at bat is the same. So whatever a guy's OPS is, or whatever his VORP is, these are these acronyms for these esoteric stats. It's hard. It's hard to just say, okay, well, whoever has a higher one of those is better. It's a tool to see. All things being equal, that's what the number is. But as you know, watching any sport, all things are never equal.
Yeah, especially when people talk about penalties or fouls in basketball game. They can say that the fouls, are so key to it. But when one team gets called for almost all the fouls the first half, and then the referee swallows his whistle the second half, there's a big difference, even though they may be 30-30. Well, those first 30 were just in the first half alone. You didn't call anything the second half. And it sounds like it's exactly the same way in baseball.
Ultimately, the game is played by people. It's a stat-driven game. You've noted that it's the most stat-driven game there is because you can actually compare to some degree. There's been lots of changes and lots of factors that affect this, but you can compare what somebody did in 1927 to what someone did in 2007. And have a general idea. A home run is still a home run, a stolen base is still a stolen base, and a strikeout is still a strikeout. The game is essentially the same in 2009 as it was in 1929. But there's a lot of different factors and things that have made the way the game is played a little bit different. But it's basically the same game, and that's where those kind of stat comparisons can come into play.
Now, being a Yankee fan, and I have to admit I am a Yankee fan too. Here in Detroit, obviously I like the Tigers. I have to. It's my local team, and they've been playing well finally for the last couple years. But Yankees have just something about that team that's magic. I love the stories about it. I love the movies about it. It's either the most loved team or the most hated team, especially if you're in Boston. But to be a Yankee fan, it's got to feel pretty good that the entire world really revolves around what you all do every season.
It's also the most written about team. As you said, all those other things. It's also the team that going back into history, and you look at the books that have been written about baseball, and there's more stuff about Yankees individuals.